If at any time that I'm going too fast or you need a clarification, please feel free to stop me then. Just like Tuesday, we will be recording this and then posting both the PowerPoint and the recording. I believe Jen just posted Tuesdays today. So if you missed Tuesdays, it is up there already.
There's a couple more people hopping on right now. I'll keep adding in that sign-in sheet in the or sign-in link in the chat for people. But yes, Tuesdays recording and presentation are uploaded onto our website, sstr2.org.
Oh, Andrea, I see your hand raised already.
Yeah, I didn't get a link for CEU for Tuesday, or have those come out yet or no? I can't hear her.
So Andrea, if you sign in, you'll automatically get a certificate of attendance via email.
Okay, so apparently I didn't sign in for Tuesday, so how do I do that?
I don't know. I would, so let me make a note of that and we'll make that happen for you, okay?
Okay, and then so how do I sign in now?
You would use that same link. The same link that I put in the chat, the sign in.
I'm not seeing the chat link, so.
Okay, I'm trying to let people in as fast as possible.
There is also, you can, if you have your phone by you, you can use the QR code that's on the screen as well that I have shared, or the website's right underneath it if you want to type that in. Karen, thank you for answering that.
I'm using my phone for the Zoom, so.
Oh, okay. You know what you should be? If you go to that PowerPoint, then the PowerPoint has the sign in login. So I know if you're using your phone today, when you are on a computer, if you go to the PowerPoint, again, the URL is on there. So at any point, go ahead and sign in. So if Tuesday you didn't get one, go ahead back to that Tuesday sign in to sign in that way. And as soon as you do that, you'll be able to get the CEU that way.
Yeah, I was just gonna say that. And as far as the question in the chat about where to find the recordings, so it's our PD on demand page on SSTR2. So if you go to our website, it's right there on the front page. There's a big button, big red button that says PD on demand, and all of our recordings are there.
Jen, I'll keep letting people in. Don't worry about that.
I got it.
Oh,
Yeah, I mean, if you get it first, that's great too.
we'll race.
All right, I'm gonna go ahead and get started. If you have any more tech questions, if you can go ahead and throw them into the chat, and Jen and Julie will kind of monitor that and help anyone still having any tech issues. I'm gonna go ahead, so I just wanna respect everyone's time to get through the information for today. So again, same norms as the other day. We're gonna have some different views. Some of us are brand new to this, some of us have been doing this for a while. And no question is stupid. Feel free if after this you have questions. Some of you went ahead and called me, some of you emailed me. They were awesome questions to the point where I am going to do a quick review because those questions enabled me to see some areas that I missed for you guys. And again, I'm going to respect that time and please be as engaged as possible. So just I'm not going to go over everything from Tuesday. Again, if you missed Tuesday, the video is posted. Really quick, Jen, did we start recording just before?
Okay. Yes.
Okay.
Yep, recording has started.
Great. I just want to do some quick notes because somebody pointed out a discrepancy that they weren't sure. I wasn't very clear on it, so I wanted to make sure that this was clear. When I talked about on the invite having to make sure that we put that it is a transition meeting as well as the annual, what I meant by that is when you mark other, you're going to go ahead and write the transition. You are not marking the box transition from school age to secondary program. As soon as you're adding a transition plan, what you are doing is marking other and adding that's that transition plan. And another question I received is, again, still wondering why that if we're putting it on the invite, we have to put it on the cover page as well. Well, we have to remember that you can have multiple meetings in a day. Whatever you put on that invite has to match that cover page. And that's why. So if you are marking something on the invite, you should be marking it on the cover page as well. When this PowerPoint is posted, you will see I do have an attachment to the monitoring, and it's kind of the transition that goes over this if anyone has any other questions on that. I did see a hand raised before. Did we go down before I keep going, or are there?
I think we're okay. Okay.
I do want to give a big shout out to Mary Jean Balda. If any of you know her, she's a great resource. And she offered to share some examples. When I went over on Tuesday, one of the things I said is we have to make sure that if we are marking down that a goal is attached to part of the transition goal, in that section 6, we need to be having some type of sentence or some connection back to the transition plan. Now, I went over the examples of putting it in the plot section of section 6. She has this great thing, and I'm going to click on it. She did allow me to share this, so that she received when she was at a conference. I'm going to make this bigger. Hopefully everyone can see that. So another way that we could do it, if you don't want to put in the plot section, is going ahead and putting it right into the goal. So in order to have the math skills needed for college level work, right away, I'm going to know that this math goal is connected to this student wanting to go to college. Another one, in order to be able to read, comprehend college material, again, without even continuing this, I know that this goal is connected back to a student that wants to go to college. So in section 5 in the transition plan, I would see as the goal that the student wants to go to college. So these are some great examples. Again, want to thank Mary Jean for this. That was one of the things she shared. And the other thing that she shared, and again, this is not a you need to do, this is not ODE saying this is not a compliance thing, but it was a great idea, and we wanted to make sure to share this with you, is on that front cover page in that other box, going ahead, and sometimes we've talked about on that page, maybe putting medication, or if there's a surrogate parent, putting that information that you want to look at right away. Well, if there's a student that already has an OOD rep, they're working with AVR, this is a great opportunity to put that information right on there. And again, Mary Jean was awesome enough to be able to kind of share an example for anyone that's interested in some examples that she has done. So again, I am not saying, I'm going to repeat this, in the other box, this is not that you have to do this. This is just such a great habit, I think, and best practice. And she was willing to share this, so I wanted to share it with everybody else. Before I move on to today's topics of AATA, services and activities, does anyone have any other questions from Tuesday who are there?
I was trying to raise my hand. Can I ask a quick one?
Absolutely.
Could you clarify whether or not I feel dumb asking this question, but
Please don't. If you have it, I'm sure someone else on here does.
do we have to have a connection of a transition activity to a goal? In other words, some activities aren't really connecting to goals. Do you have to make sure that there is some connection?
Not in the activity part, but if you are making a goal, whether it's post-secondary, whether it's the goal in employment, whether it's education and training or independent living, any of your section 6 goals should be preparing you for your ultimate goal, which is that transition. So absolutely, every one of your long-term goals, every one of your transition goals should connect to the things that you're doing in any of the other areas.
But you could leave that box blank of the goal that it relates to, if it doesn't relate to a specific goal, or no?
Can you give me an example? Just so I make sure I'm understanding.
I get from a lot of lab instructors that what the student needs is to wear PPE and correct uniforms, or another one is doesn't, stay on task. So once the activity suggestion is to have them have prompts to stay on task, but it may not be across the board. So it's just like, say, in lab. So I write lab instructor will give the prompts. I don't really have a goal for that.
Danielle, this is Mary Jean. I think she's confusing, like all of us do, the post-secondary goal with the transition activity. And what Danielle is saying, Lisa, is that maybe that student's post-secondary goal is after graduation from high school, Billy Bob is going to be a carpenter at a construction site. And then you're connecting that to that's the goal. You're connecting to maybe a math goal that in order for Billy Bob to be a successful carpenter, we are going to work on using a ruler with 90% accuracy. You're not connecting the activity of wearing his PPE to a Section 6 goal, or an activity of completing a job application to a Section 6 goal. You're connecting the post-secondary goal of whatever employment or education and training to a Section 6 goal. And even if you click the question mark on IEP Anywhere next to that box that says, number of annual goal, it clarifies you're connecting it to the post-secondary goal to the annual goal, not the activity to the annual goal.
Oh, thank you for that. I bless you for that, because I have always thought of I'm connecting the activity instead of goal to goal. So thank you. I really do feel dingy now.
No, it's a common, it's okay. We're
Thanks,
all
Mary
learning.
Jean.
Sure.
Like I said, I'm sure someone else had a question like that. Thanks, Mary Jane, though. I appreciate you jumping in. I was struggling. I was about to go look at the actual IP to see where we're at. Are there any other questions before I get into today?
Christina Fraxias, when you said number of annual goals related to the transition needs, does that mean all of the goals that I have for that student, I have to write it down? How many goals is that, including their behavior?
So I'm gonna go to this screen just so we can see what we're talking about. Right here, where it says number of annual goal, what it's saying is, so if in Section 6, your goal number 1 is reading, your goal number 2 is math, and goal number 3 is behavior. Okay, let's say those are your 3.
Okay.
If my goal is for a student to go to college, I might connect, well, they're gonna have to do some reading to get into college, right? They're gonna have to do math and behavior. Well, they're gonna have to accept constructive criticism, right? So in that instance, goal 1, goal 2, and goal 3 would have to do with that. But let's say for the independent living, perhaps I don't feel that behavior piece, because the behavior is more on getting homework completion done, right?
Okay.
But
okay,
reading and math are needed. So if this was independent living, I might just say goal number 1 and goal number 2 are connected to it.
Okay. Okay. Thank you.
No problem.
One more question.
Okay.
On the frequency, are we writing the semester? Are we writing quarter? Are we talking about yearly?
I'm going to go over that today. That is today's
Okay.
thing. So if you don't mind holding tight on that one,
Okay.
I will answer that question shortly, actually.
Okay.
All right. So on Tuesday, we went over writing the goals, course of study, and the number of the annual goals. So today we're going to hit the rest of these. So some of us know it as PIM, some of us know it as SPIN. I'm going to go ahead and put it SPIN because I really do believe in that positive, starting off with the student strengths, right? So when we're doing this, we're always looking for what are their strengths, what are their preferences, what are their interests, and their needs. And all of these things are what lead to the goals and services. And again, when you do get this PowerPoint and you take a look at it, there is a template that's on there for O'Cali. It's on the O'Cali website that kind of helps go through the spin. We're gonna see if I can get this to work. Okay, the link actually did. And on page 4, I really do love this. This kind of helps get you questioning, okay? Maybe some of the ways that you can look for what should be in each area. Again, you do not have to use this, but O'Cali does have this. It goes with the person center and backwards planning like we talked about the other day. And again, this link is going to be on that PowerPoint. So when we do post this, you'll have access to that one too. Again, just some guidance, and I know that many of you know a lot of these things, but when we're looking at AATA, and something I don't have on this, but I do want to clarify because actually a couple months ago, this was a question I received, and I just want to say this loud and clear to everyone. You do not have to get parent permission for AATA. The parent permission is for ETRs. That is when it's helping to make a determining factor. AATA is not making a determining factor. AATA is just getting us to understand the whole student, what their interests are, what their needs are, what their strengths are. So you do not need parent permission. So if you have heard that, that is directly from ODE, that you do not have to when you are working with AATA. But there are some things we want to make sure of. Any of the things that you are providing to a student should be provided by multiple people. Anyone should be able to walk in there and give to them the activity, or give to them the worksheet that they're doing, give to them the survey that they're doing online. It should not be just one person. Again, you should be looking over multiple environments. Should be understandable. Sometimes one assessment can be enough. Most times I put that star there. It's probably not going to be enough to really understand the student as a whole. And go ahead, look at the formal and informal observations. We can tell a lot, right? I am starring this again. I mentioned this Tuesday, but I'm going to mention it again. Live Binder, if you have been using it, it might still be open as of today, but it is switching over to the CI toolkit. Everything will be there. And in this has all this guidance, and it has some amazing resources for AATA if you have any questions on it. Okay, I am showing a chart, but I again want to say you do not have to put this in chart form. I do this so that when I am explaining this, it's pretty clear all the information you should be including in this section. You need the type of assessment that you used, the person and the source of assessment, and the date or time period of assessment. I am going to touch upon this. Sometimes we do a great job and we write down the exact date at the top. Sometimes we forget, right? We have 1,000,001 things on our plate. As long as you can say that, hey, I did that in October of 2021, that is okay. Obviously, would it be preferred to have the exact date? Yes. But if you do not write that down, as long as we have that time period for when you gave the assessment. So in each of these 3 areas now, education, training, the employment, and the independent living. Stress it again. You need our preferences, our interests, our needs, our strengths. And this is another thing that sometimes we forget to do. Some of you just do it naturally and don't realize you're doing it. So before you stress, let's kind of talk about this. You need to be able to summarize how this information supports the post-secondary goal. We can't just be putting random facts in there that have nothing to do with the goal, right? If a student is interested in working with their hands and they, and that's a strength of theirs as well. They're a manipulative kind of with their hands and they like cars, right? But a need is that their focus or their follow through, right, is something that is needed to to work on. We have to have some type of summary sentence that kind of shows like, due to all of these things, this is why the goal is what it is. Again, a lot of you naturally do this as you are going ahead and putting your strengths, your needs, your interests, and preference. I just need to stress that you have to make sure to summarize that information. It needs to make sense with the goal that you're creating. I'm going to stop and ask questions here because I know that sometimes has elicited questions in the back, so in the past. Does anyone have any questions about that part?
This is Mary Jean again, Danielle. Just in the past, and everyone on this call would agree, the teacher will sit down and make this IEP very specific to Bobby wants to be a carpenter and he doesn't want to go to college, and he writes everything, how it supports that. And then at the IEP meeting, he says, oh, now I want to be a high school chemistry teacher. And then, so you kind of have to be purposely vague. I don't like to use those words, but it has to be generic enough, yet specific enough to keep ODE happy. But I mean, how many times have we sat down and looked at the future plan and the kid said, oh, that was last month, I don't want to do that anymore. Or that was yesterday, I don't want to do that anymore. And you've written the IEP so specifically for this one career path or this one post-secondary goal. And then you have to make all these edits in the meeting, and that's kind of hard to do. And I don't know how to fix that, but.
I think that's where that summarizing. So if you have that summary, so they might change, but then the next day after the IEP, they change again, right? So if you're in the IEP, the whole reason for that summary part that I'm saying is, why did we create this goal? So the goal is created to look into carpentry because according to all of these assessments, according to observations, according to all these days, this is what the family said, this is what the student said, and this is what the teacher said. So that when you are in a meeting and the student says, oh, I changed my mind, we can say, okay, well, we're still going to research this because this is the data that we have, right? And that's why that summarizing that is so important.
Danielle, you have a question. Lisa has her hand up.
Okay. Lisa?
Yep, sorry, me again. I've been putting that summative statement not on the transition page, but more so in future planning. Is that good enough to have that statement be there instead of on the actual page 5 or step 5?
I think at the end of the day, the more places you put it, so if you put it in that area, that's totally fine, but I would recommend almost putting it also in the transition. So that way it's everywhere and there's no questions asked.
Okay,
again, that is not a compliant thing. That is more, the more places you can put things that people see, the less questions that they're going to ask when you give a parent an IEP.
Good afternoon, Southview Middle School.
Lisa, did that answer your question?
I think so, but I didn't hear that last comment from someone.
I think it was just an announcement. Someone's out of middle school. I heard that.
Oh, okay. Yes, it did answer my question. Thank you.
Okay, good. Anyone else before we move on? So this next slide, if anyone's on here from Elyria, I'm going to give them props to this. They allowed me to share it as well. This is something that they do. They have a spin assessment again, and this is what they use in each of their sections, just to make sure that their intervention specialists are covering each of the areas. So again, I was just adding this chart because this is one school district that uses it and they do have it in place. Just some things. So when we are writing this plot, again, it doesn't have to be a chart, but whatever you are doing, if you are writing it in paragraph form or however you're writing, please make sure you understand it has to be easy to read for parents. You have to demonstrate growth. Again, we've talked about it. If you start in 7th grade, a transition plan, it should not be the same as in their senior year, right? So we have to demonstrate growth. We want to make sure that we have that compliance going, attainable goals, and then it's showing that the AAT is continuous and it's updated. So these are all areas that when you are writing that up, whether it's in a chart form or it's in paragraph form, these are key things that you want to make sure that you're including and looking at. All right. Christina?
I'm sorry, they were announcing, so I couldn't ask my question. The section of that you put the for the education, for the employment, that's the section that is the preference, interest, need, and the spend that you're talking about. Is it a possibility that for each one of them can be different? The strength for the employment, the strength for the education. But what's going to happen that maybe is going to be also the same?
Yes.
So I can
Yes to
use
both
it.
ears. Mhm.
It can be both. So, okay. I just had a concern about that because some kids, they go to the college, some kids, they want to go to the university, some they don't want to do anything except working. So that's how I feel it, that it can be different. Okay.
Sometimes they are the
that's
same.
all I
absolutely.
want. Yeah, thank you.
And
Andrea?
Danielle, before you go on, there's
Yes.
someone else with their hand up, Andrea King.
Yeah, can you expound a little bit more about how to show the growth? Are you talking from one IEP to the next IEP, or from, you know, the beginning of the IEP to the end of the IEP?
It's really showing the growth from IEP to IEP, that the student has done those services and activities, right? And they're growing and they're becoming more independent. They're coming closer to their goal, whether it is to go to college, whether it is to go straight to work. So it's showing a growth from more specific. It's going from less specific to more specific.
Danielle,
that
you have another
answer it?
hand up. You have another hand up. Lisa has a question.
So following up on Andrea's question, is that why we have to have the previous year's transition data in each section?
You do not, compliance-wise, have to. That is one of those, is a best practice to show the growth, yes, but that is not a compliance thing that ODE is going to look for you to have their 7th grade, 8th grade. They're not going to look for that. What they're just going to look for is, again, the data, the progress report, right? Because now that we're doing progress reports on transition, that right there should be the growth. So if you're looking at a student's file, right, that all of that's already in there, so you don't necessarily have to put it in the transition plan of the IEP.
Oh, thanks. That makes sense because I've always thought that. Why are we doing it in progress report then? Thank you.
No problem. All right. Jen, am I good to move on?
Yeah, I think you are. I'm not seeing any other questions.
Perfect. All right, so we're going to get into the services and activities now. So there's 6 key factors I'm going to kind of go over here. Every service and activity must be based on the needs of the AATA. If you have not put that it is a need of a student, right, why are we adding it in there? If it's not a need and they're already doing it, we don't have to be doing that. That student is already independently doing that. If the service may be something the student needs to work on, if it's not listed in the needs, it should not be in the service activity. Again, I'm stressing this, guys, from ODE. If it is not written in the needs, we should not be adding it randomly into an activity. It should not be uniform based on grade level, must be individualized. So if we come into school, every freshman should not have the same activities that they're doing. Services must change annually unless there is data to support keeping the activity. Again, if you're with me Tuesday, I stressed it is okay to have things the same year to year. But if you keep it the same, you must have a reason why. So in that data section, you're going to tell me why it's the same. Perhaps they didn't get around to it, right? Only half of it was completed. You're going to expand a little more on something. You have to put why that activity is not changing. The other part, if all students are receiving whatever the activity is, do not put it in transition services. I'm going to give an example of this. If every student at your school is going to visit a career tech school, if every sophomore has that opportunity, right? You cannot put down in the service an activity that they will go visit it. However, if they are going to go visit that school, and then they are going to come back and meet with you one-on-one to discuss the things, and that's not what the others are doing, then you can add that as the activity, because that is not what all students are doing. Hopefully that makes sense. Feel free, ask questions on that one. And again, this last one is at least one service for each. However, if a service only happens one time, such as filling out OOD paperwork, then you must have 2 services.
Okay, here, I'm sorry, this is a question. When you said 2 services, that's a frequency that you're talking about. So how should I put it? Because I am in middle school, so my student, they're going to go to college. I'm going to help them to research. Is it mean 2 semesters, or is it mean
So-
every quarter?
I'm still not to the frequency quite yet, but I mean,
Oh,
this service is just some, I mean, it kind of is, you're right. So if you're helping them research, are you only doing it one day the entire year? Like on October 15th, that's when they're going to research. Or is that something you might do? Quarter 1, we're going to research one career. Quarter 2, we're going to research another. If you are
Oh.
doing that multiple times, right? That's not a one-time thing. The one-time thing I'm talking about. Sorry, was someone, that one-time thing is really only filling out paperwork one time, or you're going to talk to a person only one time. So if it's possible that you'll do an activity more than once, and I'll go over frequency in a moment, then you can have just that one activity. Mary Jean, I'm going to ask you to back me up on that one. Did I miss anything with that? You're really good at that part. She left me. Okay. Well, I'm going to move forward then. So the transition services, we have to word it in terms of what the district will do to help the student, okay? We have to do more than provide an opportunity. That's great. My boss might provide me the opportunity to stay an hour after my day ends, but that doesn't mean I'm going to do it, right? So we actually have to do the things that we're doing. So the student will or provide an opportunity? No. Who's doing it? The intervention specialist will teach or will instruct on. Will work with the students. Any questions on the wording of that? Okay. There are a ton of links on here. Again, when you get the PowerPoint, feel free. These are some transition services and activities. I like to share these with everyone. Again, you're identifying the service activity to support, gathering the data, rewriting if need be based upon those assessments, and then determining these activities. These are all great resources. Again, that live binder will change soon to this continuous improvement toolkit. I wish I could tell you what day that's going to happen. Back in November, I was told it was going to happen in December. December, I was told January, and January, I was told we don't know. So it could be at any point, but please, you have the links for both of those. These are some other ones that are some great examples. Feel free. O'Callaghan has some great ones. There's some activities by grades, but feel free to use any of the links once that PowerPoint is given to you. All right, I'm about to touch on frequency, but I just want to double check that there's no questions on those services or activities.
I have a question. So on my transition, I put with the support of the intervention specialist, the student will. Is that not okay? Should I rephrase that?
Yes, because what you're doing is what are we as a district doing? Because if you remember, the only thing we are really, the compliancy piece is what is the district doing? We can't really force a kid to do something at the end of the day, right? But we can say this is what we are going to do. So it really should be on what the activity that you're going to do. So the activity could be the school counselor will take the students to visit JVS, and upon return, intervention specialist will meet with the student. So again, even though it's saying what the student has the potential to do, right? Really what we're saying is what we as a school are doing.
Okay, thank you.
No problem. All right, anyone else? Andrea?
So Danielle, Andrea has her hand up again.
The question with that last piece,
Mhm.
you're breaking up.
Andrea, are you there?
I'm not sure. Maybe we lost her.
She's
I'll
calling
text
from
her.
her phone, so
Okay.
that's probably why she's watching this on her phone.
Oh, yes.
I'll text her real quick and see if she's trying to get back in or something.
Great, thank you.
Okay.
Mary Jean, I see your comment, and that's totally fine. I will tell you, one of the things that ODE pushes is to put down who's doing it, but absolutely the instruction and practice. So it's really just making sure you're putting who's going to be doing that. But again, if you're putting that in the person agency responsibility, that's okay as well.
Okay, I'm back.
Welcome back.
Dead zone, I guess, that I went through. My question is, with that last one you were talking about doing two different things. You can use the word "and" then in the activity.
Yes, especially if it has to do with the same activity, because that one is I'm going there, and then upon return we're going to discuss
Right,
it.
right. They have to be related, but you don't have to do those as two.
No, you don't want, in the example I gave, you don't want to do it two separate, because that first part is what all students get to do. And the second part is what makes it different from everybody else.
Right. So in the responsibility part of that, then if you're listing, then would you list two people? Would you list guidance and intervention specialist, or?
Yes. Whoever you're putting doing that service is going to be that person agency responsible. All right, Jen, how are we doing?
I do have a question, sorry.
No, you're okay.
If we do list two people, like in SDI, do we have to have it under two different things?
No, you can have more than one person and that person agency responsible for this. I will tell you, whoever you put as responsible, make sure they know that, because they are legally, when it comes down to that progress report, it's going to be, both those are going to have to say that they did their side of it. So on 10/18/21, the school counselor took them to this, and on 10/19, the intervention specialist met with them. So whoever you put down as that person agency responsible, just make sure they know about it. And that's because they're both doing pretty much that same service activity. Just because there's two parts of it, there's A and B, but they're the same accomplishment part of it. You can put them in the same.
That's all the questions that I see, Danielle. I don't see anything in the chat. I don't see any hands raised.
All right, perfect. All right, so for the frequency, Again, you can put as many services that you would like, but you have to collect data on all of it. So be nice to yourself, be kind. Again, if you only need one activity because you're going to do it each quarter, you don't have to put more than one of them. Absolutely, you can go ahead and do more activities, but whatever you put here in that transition plan, you must have data for. And again, look at the services you're already doing naturally. Some services will need to be done in addition, but naturally as educators, we are doing a lot of these things already. So think about what you're already doing to prepare our students, right, for their post-secondary goals. So this frequency part, this is the minimum amount of time you do something. Again, you can always do more. You do need to document though based on your frequency. So if you're putting one time, it could be one time a week, you must document weekly then. One time a grading period, then you're going to document one time each grading period. But do not say, and I can't stress this enough, don't say you're going to do something multiple times when it should only be done one time. If you are going to do a career interest inventory, are you going to do it multiple times in a year? I mean, maybe you might do it in spring and fall, but at that point you might have already done the IEP. During the IEP, how many times are you going to do it? Be honest with it, because you are going to need that data. And then there's that last one again. If something's only done once, make sure you have that second activity. I believe, was it Christina that had some questions at the beginning about frequency? Does this answer your questions now? Okay.
Thank you. Yes, thank you.
No problem. Does anyone else have any questions on the frequency part?
So Lisa's hand is up. I'm not sure if it's still up from before or if it's.
Nope, it's up.
Okay, okay.
Thanks.
Uh-huh.
So frequency clarification. I have been writing in the frequency, doing something, say 4 times a quarter or 2 times a quarter, and it has been changed here to weekly because it's something I was told that they should be doing weekly anyways, or that they do it daily. So for instance, if it's a soft skill taught in lab, oh, well, they do it all the time. So you should have weekly on there. Am I correct in understanding that you can always do it more, but just like we do with goals, we might say 2 out of 3 attempts, but we're teaching comprehension every week. So is it the same for frequency for transition, that we would be able to put just say 4 times a quarter, even though it's going to be done more, but the data is only collected 4 times?
Yes, Lisa, and I'm going to go back to, I'm going to kind of circle this right here. It's the minimum amount of time. This is not saying you cannot do stuff every day, every week, but whenever you put it, that's that data collection piece. And I'm going to go back to what I said before, be kind to yourself. Are you going to, in your transition plan, have every single day that you want to enter something in this? So absolutely, you can do it more. The frequency is telling how often are you going to be collecting data on this to provide progress on these goals.
Oh, thank you. You just clarified that. I thought I had the right thinking on that. So, oh, my life is happy again.
I could help. Jen, am I good to move on?
I think you're good. It's all the questions that I see.
Okay. All right, we're almost done, guys. So
45, let's go.
For the projected begin and end dates, it can be IEP dates, or if you know something will be completed by a certain time, you can list the start and end times. Do not use through graduation. Again, this is IEP to IEP. We are supposed to be showing progress. So if you put through graduation, that's not showing the progress yet, right? However, for example, let's say I know that on the OD rep is going to be coming on November 5th, and that is when that paperwork is going to be done. guess what? My projected end date might be that date because I want all that paperwork done. Okay. But usually you are going to see it with the IEP dates. But again, if it is a one-time thing, you might know the exact date and you can change that. For the person agency responsible, I mentioned this before, I'm going to say it again. Make sure you keep this a district staff member. Here's why. If you put down that it is an outside person and they don't do what they're supposed to do because they don't work for the district, why they don't have to, right? The district is now, they must now reconvene and they have to figure out alternate strategies. How are we going to implement this transition service? And you're going to have to come together to figure out a way to fix it. So do not put people down that do not know you're putting them down. And really, really, really try to stay with the district staff member. Can you go ahead and put someone else? Yes, I'm not going to tell you you can't. However, what I'm going to say is people change jobs all the time. So if you put someone specific down and they're no longer there, well, that's going to be quite an issue for the IEP team because they're going to reconvene to look at this transition plan then. Not seeing any hands. Anything in the chat?
Nope, nothing else in the chat.
All right, so the type of evidence, it may include, but it's not limited to, again, anecdotal records, checklists. I'm not going to read all these things. But I am going to say, do not overdo the tracking check marks because you must prove you have tracked in all those ways. Just as we just talked about with frequency and the number of activities, if you mark that you are going to do 3 of these things, each time you do that progress, so if you're doing progress every 4 weeks or every 8 weeks, you need to have all these things for each of those times. So please make sure, make it easy on yourself. Do not overdo. Okay, I'm going to go just a little bit because I just kind of talked about the frequency, how we're doing that progress monitoring. It is an essential component of this transition part. Again, if we're creating a transition plan, there is progress with it. Just some suggestions. Again, portfolios work, right? Performance assessments, rubrics. And I put an example on here. I'm not sure if anyone is familiar with 10 Sigma or not. Feel free to look it up. There are some free things, others you do have to pay for, but they do have some examples of some rubrics that you can at least utilize if you want to create your own. But these are just some examples and suggestions of things that can help you with progress monitoring. Couple more things we're talking about progress monitoring in the transition lens. Guys, it is similar to what a lot of you have brought it up, that this is very similar to the goals that you've been used to creating, right? But we're going to look at things just from a transition lens. So perhaps, and I'm not going to read all these, but let's look at a CBM, right? Usually we're going to have this on some type of reading goal. But guess what, guys? It can also, we can use it for the student skill development. Remember, if a student wants to go to college, right? They want to live independent. They're going to be able to they have to read these things, right? They're going to have to read a contract if they want to sign papers for a lease, right? They want to buy a house one day. So you can use, here's progress monitoring. We can use it for a transition lens. But again, no matter how the progress monitoring data impacts the development of the IEP, the whole goal, you are providing the family with information for the student's future planning. So if you were to use CBMs, right, you just have to prove, again, just as I said before, what does that CBM have to do anything with their future planning? Well, because I need them to be able to read fluently, so when they get something in a college class, they're able to complete it independently. That can be kind of confusing. Does anyone have any questions on that?
I'm not seeing anything in the chat. I'm not seeing any hands raised.
Okay. Again, I just want to stress the data collection versus progress monitoring. Data collection is how you gather it. When you go to progress monitor, though, you are basically taking that data collection and you're explaining, right? You're giving that descriptive, the single point, the rubrics, collection of indicators. So these are the way that we're documenting. So let's say I use observations, right? My data collection is going to be written, all these observations. When I go to Progress Monitor, I'm going to give a description of my observations. If I'm using curriculum-based assessments, right? Maybe in my progress monitoring, I'm going to talk about a single point and how that is demonstrating growth towards their goal. So here's the data collection. Here's how we're changing it into progress monitoring. These are just examples. The list can go on. So if anyone has specific questions, I am going to ask for this one that you reach out to me separately, because this is very individualized. I know with the student and the situation. All right, I believe there's only 2 more slides, guys. So for the target date for child to graduate, it is obviously typically June of the year they're supposed to be graduating the 4 years. Please do not change that target graduation date until after they've exceeded the typical graduation year. The problem by doing that is you are predetermining the outcome, okay? So we know that we cannot predetermine. So please keep it at that 4 year, right? Until that 4th year, that IEP, if it's going to be that 5th year, then go ahead and change it, but do not change it before that. And is it okay to put, because you're not exactly positive on the exact date? Yes, especially if you are doing this in 8th grade year. We don't know the district calendar at that point, so it is okay to put just June of 2026. Again, as we get closer, just as I've talked about with everything else, we should become more specific. So the moment that you do know what year that typical is and that calendar is out, you should start putting that actual date. Jen, how are we doing?
So we have a hand up.
Okay.
Victoria?
Yes. So then I have a question with that. When for the EMIS portion that's right above, now I can't think about where it is exactly, but when it says, will the student be completing this, in the 4 years of high school, or is it 4+? How do we keep that? Do we keep that 4 years until they've reached that plus years, or not?
Well, again, by the time you are changing it to that, you're going to have a better idea, right? So we start our transition plans when we're 14. The kids are usually 7th, 8th grade, right? You really shouldn't know at that point. Decisions should not be made that early on. If you do know, and you're already saying, like the parents have already agreed, and you are marking it in that section, and you do change this target date, you need to make sure you are putting that in the notes section, you're putting that in the profile, you are putting that throughout the entire IEP, that family is in agreement and the team is in agreement with that.
Okay, because I do put it in, I'm trying to think, in the future planning. So
make sure that it's going in the notes home to the parents, make sure it's in the plot. You're going to want to put that in as many places, just to cover yourself that you're not predetermining something.
Okay, thank you.
No problem.
I'm not seeing any other questions. Danielle.
Perfect. This is the last slide. And I just really want to give everyone that link to the indicator 13 checklist. If you are unsure of something, this is quite useful, right? And I'm going to click on this link just to show you everything I've gone over. It goes into depth in every section of all the details of what should be added and how to determine, am I doing my transition plan correct? Do I have all of this stuff? When I was an intervention specialist, I really truly did use this quite often to make sure that I was covering myself with it. So feel free to share this, but again, I would recommend using that indicator 13 to make sure that you're covering it, and that right there goes into detail. It's pretty useful. All right. Again, I appreciate any feedback. I'm asked quite often to come and present on transition. Just like on Tuesday, I really appreciated everyone that reached out to me and gave me some feedback that allowed me to know what I had to go and touch base on and clarify and look for more information. So feel free to, I love constructive criticism because it really does help me for the future, and making sure I answer all of your questions. With that said, are there any other questions before we end today?
I'm not seeing or hearing any, Danielle.
All right.
I
Again,
did. Go ahead. Mhm.
I went ahead, guys, on this as well. A link to our page where you can find some other upcoming PD networks. And again, it has our contact information on here.
So,
And
so Danielle, can I interrupt you for one quick second?
absolutely.
Sorry, there is a hand raised. Lisa?
Okay.
So it's not a question. That's why it was a late raise. I just wanted to say thank you so much. This has been the best transition clarification that I have had in all the years I've been doing this, which is, I'm close to retirement, so it's many. So thank you so much. You guys are phenomenal.
All right, and check out the link in the chat. So tell us how phenomenal we are in writing. We'd love to see that. Tell Danielle how phenomenal she is. And I threw a link in there, or a note in there, that our next IEP happy hour is February 1st at 3 o'clock, where we're going to talk about section 6.
Does Victoria have her hand up, or am I late to the party on that one?
I think that's up from before, but Victoria, you want to double check? Because I think that's from the last question. Oh, looks like she took it down. Okay. Lisa, did you get all your questions answered?
And again, if anyone has any specific questions, feel free to reach out. Again, email,
I
call.
did. Sorry.
Oh, no, you're good. I just know sometimes with transition, it can get where it's a very specific situation. So feel free to reach out.
Okay, and I threw your email in the chat, Danielle, just so they
Thank you.
could grab that. And then there's a question in the chat. When will the PowerPoint be available? So hopefully tomorrow I will be able to post the presentation and the recording from today. It depends how long it takes the recording to come to me via email. So, and speaking of recording, I'm gonna stop that now.